Hey everybody, welcome to the Inside Sports Studio for this edition of Talkin Hockey. This is our second round playoff preview, but before we get into the preview itself, let's go ahead and give a little thanks to our sponsor here, thepuckshopshere.com. Discount hockey gear available online. They already have the best prices and free shipping on all orders over $75. Go ahead and enter the promo code Inside Sports upon checkout and you'll receive an additional 10% discount. That said, it is time for the second round preview. The Stanley Cup playoffs are underway, and in just a moment I will be joined by, as I always say, one of the foremost hockey authorities you'll find anywhere, from deep in eastern Canada in an undisclosed location in a bunker somewhere in Toronto. In his personal war room is Lonnie Schwartz. You can follow him on Twitter at theschwartz54 or his fantastic website, hockey54.com. I cannot really do him justice here, so let's go ahead and bring the man, the myth, the legend on right now, Lonnie Schwartz. Lonnie, what's happening?
Do me justice, man. I can't beat an intro like that. I always love the undisclosed location. I love that. That's awesome shtick, and I'll ride with that. Anyways? I'm in Toronto. I'm everywhere. The Schwartz is everywhere. It's like the Force. You can't pinpoint it, but it's everywhere.
If there's a thermal graph, we see these little hot points around Toronto, and that's like maybe within a 6-block radius of where you may be at any given time. I understand that.
I got to throw people off with my presence. That's how it works.
There you go. All right, so let's go ahead and talk. Let's talk a little bit of hockey54.com before we get started. You got a contest going there, and how are things going over there on hockey54.com?
Things are doing fine. We got our Beardo contest, My Beardo 54. You enter, you grow a beard, you paint a beard on, you go to a costume shop and throw one on with some glue. Just don't make it crazy glue because that could get dangerous. And have some fun with facial hair, and we'll throw you some great prizes from Beardo Wear, and you get some cool stuff from Goon. We got a signed copy of a CD from one of the greater independent artists in Canada, Mike Lords and Sauce Funky, and now that they're going deep into the playoffs, I'm pretty confident that we're going to get a mean picture of Shea Weber, signed copy for you, because we got some good connections in Nashville, and that beard's going to look very, very mean tonight. I can imagine the fear in the hearts of men, women, and children everywhere will be raised to 11 when they see Shea tonight.
All right, fantastic. You know what? Let's go ahead and get into it. This is our second round preview. Lonnie. Now we'll go ahead and talk about this first. We both did our picks. I wound up going 6-2. You wound up going 4-4, which is okay. That means you fought off some really tough pitches there. But when I think about it, it really came down to those 3 Game 7s where that separated me from being, just mediocre and being a genius. So because of how 2 of those Game 7s went, I get to go ahead and say genius. And, unfortunately, Lonnie, you fell on the other side of the fence there, man.
I said it while we were doing pre-production. I will say it again. In baseball, I would be greater than Ted Williams at 500, so I'll run with that. I'll spin it. I'll do my media savvy thing and spin it that way. I am better than Ted Williams. Yes.
Well, you know what? One thing I wanted to discuss, though, is we may have a true changing of the guard, though, when we look at the tee times that are being set now. I mean, San Jose, Chicago, Detroit, Vancouver, Pittsburgh, Boston, all out. And not only that, but when you look at the ease with which Vancouver, Detroit, and San Jose were dispatched, all 3 of those high-powered teams expected to at least do maybe a little something, and they're gone in 5 games each.
I don't know what to tell you about those ones. I've got a bit of a head-scratcher on at least Detroit. I mean, I thought they'd put up a much better fight at home, and they didn't. And Nashville showing great depth, good youth, like the guys at RLD and Preds on the Glass, and everyone in Smashville was talking about how Gabriel Bork would be the person to look out for, and he's truly showing that he is one of the young guns to look out for on that team. So hats off to Nashville. Even Mike Babcock, he's like, look, they had great depth, they had great performances, and their goaltender was all world, and we all know that because he's been nominated for the Vezina again this year, and that's Pecorine if you're not paying any attention out there. So look, when you've got one of the better coaches of this generation tipping his hat to another organization who is also helmed by probably the most unheralded coach in the NHL in Barry Trotz, because, I mean, come on. I like a good story where a team goes from worst to first, but to maintain this kind of hockey for the better part of 12 years, you got to give credit to Trotz. I think Trotz has been robbed of that Adams Trophy, but that's for another discussion later. But yeah, look at how things have unfolded, and look at how Alain Vigneault had his team unceremoniously dispatched, which you called for, and what can you say? They were outdueled. They were outworked. Vancouver didn't play Vancouver's game. For some reason, they turned that switch to, okay, we got to get rough. No, you play your game and you win with that game. You got the President's Trophy by doing what? You didn't do it by playing Boston Bruins smash mouth hockey. You didn't do it by playing like the Broad Street Bullies. You played like the Vancouver Canucks, and then all of a sudden in the playoffs, you get this mentality that it didn't work in the regular season or something.
And you know what? From what I understand, though, that may lead to sweeping changes there in Vancouver. I guess Luongo, first he was open to waiving his no-trade clause. Then he requested a trade, from what I understand. And then also there's talk about possibly Ryan Kessler being out in Vancouver. But I think I can fix two teams here in one fell swoop. You got the San Jose Sharks, who fell woefully short this year. And Patrick Marleau, again, had a really bad playoff. Kessler was bad. I think what they should do is, Marleau is 5 years older than Kessler, but he has 2 less years on his contract. Vancouver and San Jose should just go ahead and swap straight up Kessler for Marleau and just call it a day. And in fact, for Marleau, the number 12 is actually open right now in Vancouver. So he would be able to seamlessly go. He'd still be playing in a blue jersey, although a slightly different shade. And, the same thing for Kessler, although Torrey Mitchell has number 17, so Kessler would have to make an adjustment in that sense. But go ahead and swap those two guys before you make any really sweeping changes, and just see how that goes.
You know what? I wish I knew how the trade winds were blowing. But when it does come to trades, I don't think that any team should be in contention for Luongo other than Tampa. I don't think Luongo will be terribly thrilled about going to an environment like Chicago, but then again, he wouldn't have to face Chicago, so that would complement them, because Corey Crawford, look, you give the kid a couple of years, and he's shown he has no playoff prowess whatsoever, and maybe that's a good fit for Luongo, but I really think there's a lot to be said about what all the media folks are saying about his desire to maybe go back to Florida and Tampa Bay. Even if it's for the next 3, Roberto Luongo, everybody talks about him as if he's, going to be in a walker next week. He's 33 years old? Right. I'm 34. I'm only a year older than Roberto Luongo, and he's still got a lot of prime hockey left in him. Why we talk about him as if that contract for the next 10 years is some sort of burden is beyond me. It's a cap hit of $5.3 million a year, which isn't terrible. You make the right trade in Tampa, and all of a sudden, you have a goaltender who might not start off the best in October, but will definitely carry you towards the playoffs, because they got a much better team than Florida ever had while he was there.
Right, ever. Exactly. And plus, he won't have to be under the thumb of Mike Keenan while he's there either, and that's the other part of it. Now, why does he get the blame, though? Like I said, no matter what happens in Vancouver, he gets the blame. He was just, I think, you know what? The environment, for whatever reason, just got poisoned there in Vancouver, and there was literally nothing that Luongo could do to change that. So they're bound and determined to make him the scapegoat, and I think it's just, sometimes they're just reached a point where you just need a change of scenery. That's just the way it is.
Let's just put it this way. They would have found a way to criticize Roberto Luongo if he saved an entire orphanage.
Except for one kid. If it was burning down, Roberto Luongo could have gone in, saved every single nun and child, and they still would have found a way to blame him for something. The guy can't win. Go to an environment like Tampa where there isn't as much scrutiny, there isn't as much pressure.
You know, they're saying Toronto. Please, you think Vancouver's bad? Good Lord, Toronto is
And he'd be going
horrible.
to a horrible team there, too. That's the other side of that.
Yeah, Toronto is not the right place. I'm
Right.
all for Tampa Bay for him because it'll give him a chance to win. It'll give Tampa a better chance to win. And for the next 5 years, because let's face it, you know, over the next 5 years, he'll still be very effective, very good goaltender.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, Rolly Melanson has also taken him under his wing. Rolly Melanson was working with Dwayne Rollison, so the coaching, the goaltending situation as far as coaching goes doesn't change dramatically either. So look, I think perfect fit is Tampa, but that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss playoff hockey.
We are, definitely. And you know what? The team, you know, I got to dedicate the Western Conference semifinals. They should be called the Lonnie Schwartz semifinals. And that's because, finally, you as the goaltender, the master goaltender, the man with the glove hand from hell, you got to love this series, the matchup. I mean, Jonathan Quick against Brian Elliott in one series, and then you got Pekka Rinne, who is obviously a Vezina candidate just like Jonathan Quick is, going against Mike Smith, the upstart waiver wire pickup, who has just turned into a beast now. So fantastic goaltending, the four best goaltenders in the first round. They came out of this. So this is the classic playoff matchup. I mean, who's going to bend, who's going to break, irresistible forces, immovable objects. You know what? Let's go ahead and
Giant.
Yeah,
it's Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan all over again.
There we go. So let's start the second round preview, and let's go ahead and put it this way. 2 weeks ago, we began with 16. The 16 have become 8. From the 8, there will be 4, and from those 4, 2 will play for the championship, but there can be only one champion this year. That's my best Doc Emmerich.
There can only be one champion? Really, Doc? No. I was thinking this year they'd say, to hell with it. Let's go with 2. Now, you know what? You're right. I'm telling you right now, George Vezina, George Hainsworth, Jacques Plante, Terry Sawchuk, Billy Durnan, like the greats of greats are all up there in goalie heaven looking down and going, wow, what a group of 4 to look at. Take goaltending out of it. This is not what's going to determine the series because they're all great. They've all shown that they can shine under pressure. Tons of shots. The more shots that Mike Smith faces, you know, it's like the more gamma rays the Hulk gets. He just gets bigger and stronger. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable how Mike Smith plays. And then you also have Pekka Rinne, who is just, if you want to talk unshakable, wow. The guy plays with confidence, moves so smoothly. What a tender. I mean, Quick, maybe a little more athletic than Rinne, and maybe a lot more athletic than Brian Elliott. But Brian Elliott's just solid. When they said Halak goes down and Elliott goes in, I'm like, so?
Right.
Big deal. They won the Jennings this year. Like, people are so concerned. Like, you know, the Earth shifted on its axis and we're all going to fall to Mars. Please, settle yourself down here. What it's going to come down to is just how deep are their lineups. And when you talk about St. Louis, you know what? I'd love to say LA can pull off another upset. But when you have an X factor that we totally discounted in the first round and should have given a lot more credit to, Andy McDonald, when you've got a guy like Andy McDonald playing this way, who was so vital in terms of how Anaheim won their cup, and also you have Patrick Berglund stepping things up, yeah, the rest of the lineup sort of falls flat in terms of offensive output. But those two guys, they're making the game for that team. And I'm not sure LA has what it takes to really break that. And on top of things, St. Louis had a guy like Pietrangelo who was in the discussion for the Norris, and I guess he got nudged out of that by a hair. But in TJ Oshie, another dynamic forward you're looking at, just, again, a very strong lineup, very consistent, very few minuses on the board here for the team. I got to give the edge to St. Louis. I think we could be. I don't think we're going to look at a 5-gamer here, though.
No.
Like we're going to look minimum 6. Minimum 6. Could be 7. Could be 7 games throughout all the matchups. The way I'm seeing things,
it could.
It's just so hard.
You know, if we start with that matchup, you know, the Kings and St. Louis, that's, you know, and I was concerned with maybe when I picked the Kings against Vancouver. You know, I did my due diligence and analyzed everything before I picked, but there's always the issue of, am I picking with my heart instead of my head and don't really know it? It could be. But I look at this series and I look at the way that, you know, the Kings played in the first round. And we had 2 teams that really dispatched their opponents because, you know, St. Louis, they crushed the Sharks. They did. It was hardly even a contest. The Kings, they dispatched Vancouver, and really the teams are similarly built. We can look at the goaltending. If they kind of just X each other out, and we assume that both those guys are going to play great, then you know, it comes down to who can get the most pressure on. And I got to look at when I look at the Kings, and I look at how they won the decisive game against Vancouver. You had goals from Brad Richardson and then Jordan Stoll with the winner in overtime. Or Jarrett Stoll, I'm sorry. I got confused with Jordan Stoll. Anyways, Jarrett Stoll,
I think Jarrett Stoll was engaged to Rachel Hunter at one time, wasn't he?
I don't know. You know, a lot of those supermodels like hockey players. We could have a whole show on that one time, too. But I gotta go with LA in this series, even though they do not have home ice advantage, and they're gonna have to play an afternoon game at Staples in Game 4, and every LA Kings fan knows what that means because they've seen so many lethargic performances from the Kings over the years during day games. But I gotta go with the Kings, and I'm not surprised if this one goes 7 either. But I think in the end, just the slightly more firepower that the Kings have up front, since they've unleashed it. I know if you look at the regular season goal totals, you're going to say you're crazy saying LA has firepower up front. But look at the last month of the season, the way they've played. And really in this first series, you know, Richards, Carter, Kopitar, those guys didn't really get into it. So I think the Kings have enough to take down the St. Louis Blues. So I'm going to go Kings on this one.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. As far as I'm thinking, there are just a couple of game breakers that St. Louis has that have played really well in these playoffs. So I gotta go with St. Louis.
All right, perfect.
But
so
we'll see. I'm the one who's batting 5. You know.
All right. Well, you may catch up in this round. We never know. But let's go ahead and switch over to the East. The New York Rangers, they made it through 7 tough games against Ottawa. The Washington Capitals, overtime in Game 7 against the Boston Bruins. Now we've got the number 1 seed against the number 7 Capitals in the Eastern Conference semifinals. How do you see it, man?
I see this one again where you have goaltending X factors. There's no questioning Henrik Lundqvist. He was a game breaker every game against Ottawa. They didn't lose because Henrik Lundqvist played poorly. They only lost because of a lack of offense. And just, I have a hard time with this series because Holtby is an unproven quantity, but if you look back at his career in junior and the way he's had to work up, you know, through the pro ranks of the East Coast Hockey League and then the A and then to where he is now, a lot of people are pointing to some great success before he got to the NHL, and he seems to be carrying that forward, and he's playing great hockey. He just almost single-handedly knocked out the Boston Bruins himself. And there's good depth in terms of what Washington brings to the table in terms of offense, but they also have an X factor in Mike Green, who can really generate offense off of the blue line if he comes back to where he used to be. And if he can find that in himself, he totally outweighs what the New York Rangers provide in terms of offense from the blue line, despite what happened in Game 7 with Stahl and Girardi being the guys to win them that game. So with that said, there's also some good, strong offensive output from Washington up front. Yes, Ovechkin hasn't been the superstar, and he's been upset about his ice time, but if you're a competitive guy, I'm not going to begrudge you for that. If you sat there and said, okay, I'm complacent with the fact that, you know, I'm not on the ice, then the guy in me, being a competitive guy and understanding that nature, I'd be sitting there going, this guy doesn't care. And
Right.
even Semin, say what you will about Semin and Ovechkin. You know, a lot of people are finding ways to criticize them. They aren't the fastest of back checkers. I'll give them that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give their critics that, I should say. But when they do get into their zone, they're being effective defensively. Ovechkin's clearing rebounds out from in front of the net, and Semin is getting back and taking away scoring opportunities. So I think this is going to go 7 again, and I think you're going to see another upset. That's what my gut is telling me. We're going to see another upset from Washington this year.
Upset special from Lonnie Schwartz, huh? All right.
Upset. Upset.
So you've got the
That's what I'm
Caps.
saying. Upset.
You've got the Caps.
7 games. I got the Caps.
All right. Well, you know, this is the stuff that makes for grand theater and great shows because, you know, as I see this, I see every point that you made, and I really sort of, I agree with a lot of things wholeheartedly. And I like what Dale Hunter's done there in Washington because, you know, and you remember just, a month ago, they were calling for the head of Dale Hunter on a stick in Washington. But he's put his system in place, the players have bought into it, and now they're playing some good hockey, and some good hockey from one of the toughest hockey players you ever meet anywhere, if you remember the career of Dale Hunter. And that's, you know, the Pierre Turgeon thing aside. But I remember 1988 in overtime, Game 7, when he eliminated the Philadelphia Flyers. And, you know, he could fight, he could score, he could do it all. And I think he's finally imposed that on the team. They are a tough team, and I like, you know, the Rangers, they do break down a little bit here and there. But I think in the end, I got to look at their Vezina Trophy candidate, Henrik Lundqvist. And when he needs to, I think he can steal a game, maybe even steal 2 on the Caps. So that'll be the X factor when all is said and done and the smoke clears. They're going to look at Henrik Lundqvist and say that he is the reason why the New York Rangers have advanced to the the Eastern Conference Final. So I got to look at Lundqvist as the X factor here.
Top Henrik, he's the king. Look, I'll put it this way, though. Here's my little escape clause. Well, I'm still sticking with the Capitals. I'm still sticking with them in 7. If, and this is a huge if because I mentioned this in our last show, if Marian Gaborik decides he wants to play hockey in the second round and uses speed and shoot effectively because for some reason he forgot how to shoot the puck in the playoffs, if he decides to show up and takes a little bit of the load off of Brad Richards, then you have a different series. But only then do you have a different series. So while I stay with the Caps,
yes,
you can write it on paper, you can keep it there. If Gaborik shows up, it's a different series.
Exactly. So, yeah, a lot of things, and a lot of those things that factor into when you pick a series to go 7. It's all those wavering little tones, the momentums, the little, if this guy does this, if this happens, if that happens. So ultimately, we're looking at a 7-game series, and I think a tough series. I just like to tip it, and I say Lundqvist will be the difference here. That's why I got Rangers in 7. You like the Caps in 7. Only thing left to do is drop the puck on that series. So
yeah,
let's go ahead and switch back to the West. We'll switch back to the West where finally, the Phoenix Coyotes got to go through the handshake line in the Cup final without them going and making tea times from the locker room. So the Phoenix Coyotes are through, and you got to feel for Shane Doan, who at age 35 finally gets to taste the second round of the playoffs for the first time. As a franchise, you have to go back to when they were the Winnipeg Jets in 1987 to when they last actually won a playoff series. So the Phoenix Coyotes now, and they have, for all their troubles, they get to play the Nashville Predators. Maybe the most well-rounded team in the West, some would say. Pekka Rinne is an absolute beast. Nashville dispatched the Detroit Red Wings unceremoniously in round 1. It was like, oh yeah, excuse me, legends, goodbye. So here we got
very even matchup here.
Yeah, the Phoenix Coyotes, the Nashville Predators, of course, Mike Smith in the net, playing lights out for the Coyotes. Pekka Rinne in net, playing lights out for the For the Predators, maybe a battle of goaltenders. Then we got to look at the blue line. We got to look at the forwards and all those sorts of things, which Lonnie always takes into account prior to making one of his fantastic picks. Lonnie, there you go. Ultimate goaltending matchups. The Western Conference semifinal dedicated to Lonnie Schwartz because of the goaltending. You know, here's your first one.
Look, both of them. Both of the goaltenders, the more shots they face, the more pressure that's applied, the better they get. It's an incredible intangible to have in your favor. If you can turn around and look at your goaltender and go, "What, we're going into 8th overtime already? Oh, yeah, they're still rolling." I know that's a huge exaggeration there, but it's like you can turn around and say it's not for a lack of goaltending. If our tenders are there, we always have a chance to win. And the difference to me, though, is that the Nashville Predators tend to have just maybe that little extra to put them over. And you know what? I'm going to go in 6 here. I think Nashville's going to do this one in 6 because they have great goaltending. They've got Radulov, who's starting to pick things up at the right time, because at the start of the playoffs, he was a little bit slow. Now, he's picking things up a little bit. You've got a Gabriel Borg. You have David Legwand, who's battling hard. And how about Kevin Klein? Kevin Klein, this guy just, people say he's come out of nowhere. Let's not forget he was drafted ahead of Shea Weber.
Right.
And Kevin Klein, whom I'm calling Ra's al Klein, in homage to Liam Neeson's portrayal of Ra's al Ghul, because Klein's just been unreal. And he's such a nice guy. I had the pleasure of interviewing him at the beginning of the season when we had the Hockey 54 show rolling on a Nashville radio. And I'm telling you, this guy is really stepping things up. And that's when you have, and even Andre Kostitsyn's doing some good stuff.
Andre Kostitsyn, who listens to this show, and he actually, from what I understand, he actually gave the Lonnie Schwartz shout-out after one of his great games. So he was motivated by you, and I think he's following you on Twitter now.
Maybe he is. If he is, give me a big shout-out, Andre, because you know what, you're playing a better all-around game. I mean, I see you only have a couple points here, but under Barry Trotz, you're playing a more solid game and contributing at the right times. Gostad, Fisher, they're doing their thing. Marty Erat, who's just been smoking hot out on the ice in terms of his skating back and forth, just playing a great all-around game. Nashville just, I think, has that little extra that will put them over on a very equally matched Phoenix team. But that's just my opinion, man, as the dude would say.
There you go. And you know what? I gotta go with you, and I think what it's going to come down to is, I like the real difference here. I think it's going to be on the blue line with Ryan Suter and Shea Weber, who is, again, a Norris Trophy candidate. I like them along with Pekka Rinne, and there's just toughness there. Maybe a little bit more toughness. Of course, slamming Zetterberg's head into the glass aside, I've got to mention that. But, that's long gone. That was the first game of the series, and they settled down since then. But I like the blue line, I like the goaltending, and I like the way the team is built. But just like Dave Tippett said about his Phoenix Coyotes, he said it's built from the net out. The defensemen help the goaltender, and the forwards help the defenseman. That's the way the team is built. So they have the perfect philosophy there in Phoenix, but there can only be one winner when the smoke clears. And I think, as I've remarked when we were doing shows during the regular season, that quietly Nashville was building a juggernaut. And I think that's what's happening here. And I like your pick. Nashville in 6, that sounds about right. Phoenix could push it to 7, but again, smoke clears, only one can remain standing, and that's going to be Pekka Rinne and his Nashville Predators heading to the Western Conference Final.
Which, by the way, I gotta give a big shout out to Buddy Oakes for this one, because before the Predators came to town, he was a St. Louis Blues fan. So I can imagine, while his heart is in Nashville, his head may still remain a little bit with St. Louis. So I know he's going to be pulling for Nashville, but man, what a matchup for him if it comes down to it. St. Louis against Nashville. I'd love to get, his insight on that, because he grew up a Blues fan. So
there you go. All right, one series
left.
Sir. Go back over to the East, and this is the classic modern day rivalry here. the Philadelphia Flyers, the number 5 Flyers against the number 6 New Jersey Devils. The Flyers having dispatched the high-powered Penguins in the first round, and Jersey going the distance before finally overcoming Florida in what was a more entertaining series than a lot of people thought would be. But the Devils are through, the Flyers are through.
Yeah, us included. We thought that New Jersey, and it was as everyone said, and you put it very succinctly, the least sexy series out there.
Right.
Was like, if this was a supermodel walk, you'd be seeing these two walking down and going, why are they here?
Yeah. This was a girl next door series, you know? That's what it was. It was not about the supermodel. This was girl next door, you know? And it turned out to be fantastic.
You got that right. But then, you know what? It was like Pygmalion. There, I'm showing my educated background in English literature. And there's Pygmalion blossoming into this beautiful series that goes 7 games. Mm-hmm. But I think what it illustrated I said they were my dark horse, but New Jersey going up against a team like Philadelphia, this is just a perfect storm to bring out the brooms. I have Philadelphia sweeping the New Jersey Devils. Because if anything, I think that what they learned from their previous series against Pittsburgh is they were able, while Sidney Crosby played well, like he was one of the top point producers in the first round, part and parcel because his team had a 10-goal game. But the fact remains is that Philadelphia was able to show some mental toughness by not getting down when they lost a huge game, going forward and winning in 6 against Pittsburgh. The highest powered offensive team in the league. If Philadelphia can tighten up the D, which they will, and Brizgalov settles down, New Jersey gave up so many power play goals. It was absurd. 9 power play goals against a team like Florida. Imagine facing off against what many critics now are buying into. Although at the beginning of the year, I got to give a big shout out again to Alan Bass. Alan Bass wrote a great piece for Hockey 54 about the emergence of Claude Giroux this year that nobody really saw coming. He could very well be the best player in the world. I'm not saying that, but his coaches and other critics are. You have Claude Giroux as the field general out there on that power play, cycling low and putting pucks on net with guys going to the dirty areas in front of the net, and Giroux just sniping at will. This is going to be an ugly series for New Jersey. I don't think they have the weapons. They have a no-name defensive core, which deserves credit. But are they going to be able to shut down this team that front to back is a very complete team in Philly? No. You don't need any more eloquence than that word alone. No.
The word that is the same in every language. So here's what we. You know what? I like your analysis. That was really dead on, and I do give Jersey credit. I think that Brodeur played, he played well in spots in the first round. I think New Jersey's got 1 win in them in this series. I like Philadelphia in 5, and when we look at that, when they closed out the Penguins, if it's possible, and it goes back to something Mike Keenan said. He was coaching, I think maybe Chicago, and he talked about having a big game against Edmonton. And Mark Messier went out there. And Messier, he snapped 2 guys' sticks in the first shift and then laid a big hit on someone. And really, pretty much, he changed the game from that point forward. Now, if we go to this Game 6 against Pittsburgh and Claude Giroux, who you talked about, he lays out Sidney Crosby in the first 15 seconds, and then about 15 seconds after that scores the first goal of the game. If it's possible to win a game in 32 seconds, I think Claude Giroux might have done it in that Game 6. And Philly is really coming together now. And, not just Giroux, but, the way that Yager is playing, Hartnell and Simmons and Braden Shen, all these guys. And, James Van Riemsdyk just came back as well. Mazzaro's beat down the line, but I like the way they're playing. Yeah. Kimmo Timonen.
Yeah, Reed and Couturier, too?
Yes,
Don't
I know.
forget the other rooks. I mean, come on. Rookies just saying playoffs. Yeah, we're in it. What are you talking about, jitters? My goal is to go out there and score goals. I think people, look, I know the playoffs are a different set of rules. It's a ball of wax that a lot of people look at and go, wow, that looks an awful lot different from the ball of wax I saw 82 games ago.
Uh-huh.
The fact remains is putting pucks in the net is putting pucks in the net. And if you have a rookie who's out there and gets good tutelage from a guy like Jagr, okay, because he's going to be great in that dressing room. He's got to be. He's helped mold Giroux into what he is right now. I mean, everybody talks about the influence that Jagr has had on Giroux. Mm-hmm. And Giroux is the uncaptained captain of this team.
Yes.
He may not have the C on the sweater because they're honoring the C they gave to Pronger. But Giroux, like, he's going in, he's like, put me in, coach. Going into that game, that crucial Game 6, he goes up to Laviolette, he's like, I'm going in, right? Like, I'm on the first shift, right? Give me the ball. Give me the ball. I'm not just going to run with it. I am the Flash with it. Okay, you're not going to catch me once I got it. And when you have a kid like Giroux doing that, and you have the complementary lineup that has just been working great with them, it's going to be almost impossible for me to see New Jersey surmount that.
Yeah,
I think it's insurmountable.
There you go. All right, so let's do a review here. Second round playoff preview: Charles E. Smith Jr., Lonnie Schwartz. We look at the Phoenix Coyotes and Nashville Predators. We both agree Nashville takes that series. Just a matter of how many games really. We disagree on New York and the Capitals. Lonnie's got the Capitals. I think New York. Henrik Lundqvist, they kind of pull that series out. And St. Louis and the Los Angeles Kings. After this, I'm sure Lonnie will become a believer in the Los Angeles Kings, as I am. But for now, he has picked the St. Louis Blues after having picked against them in the first round. Well, here's the little bit of a paradox here is the Blues made believers out of me in the first round, yet I'm still picking against them in round 2. That only makes sense at playoff time, right?
Right. Throw the logic out the window.
So the Philadelphia Flyers and New Jersey Devils, we both agree there that the Flyers just too much for the New Jersey Devils. And it would take, I'll say this, if the Devils win this series, if they do, Martin Brodeur will have the Conn Smythe locked up in the conference semifinals, even if they don't even make it to the cup round. He still deserves the Conn Smythe just for having won this round against Philadelphia. I can make that call right now.
First time in history. First time in history. It'll be like, and the Stanley Cup has been awarded to the Philadelphia. No, they can't because they just got eliminated. Sorry. And the Stanley Cup has just been awarded to the Nashville Predators. And the Conn Smythe winner is, come on down, Marty. You won.
There you go, man.
What?
All
so
right,
there it is. There you have it.
There you go. And that's why we love playoff hockey, and that's why we love doing this show. And we do this show for the fans out there. And, me and Lonnie hanging every week. And, it's already time to get out of here. We're a little bit over. I've got to go ahead and get another column up on the LA Kings and then do my Arizona sports report later on today. So, Lonnie of Hockey54.com, and follow him on Twitter, folks, at the Schwartz54. Lonnie, do you have some final words for us?
It's the most wonderful time of the year. It is Stanley Cupmas. Everybody rejoice. It all starts again tonight when the guys in the West suit up and have at her. And it's just the most wonderful time of the year for a hockey fan.
Fantastic. All right. So here at Inside Sports, we're changing the world one sport at a time. Today, the sport was hockey. The show is called Talkin Hockey. You can follow on Twitter at The Inside Sports. And before we go, just once again, let's go ahead and thank the puckshopshere.com. Discount hockey gear available online. Free shipping on all orders over $75. 10% discount when you use the promo code Inside Sports upon checkout. So everybody, again, we thank you for joining us. I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. My partner there was Lonnie Schwartz, and we'll see you next week on Talkin Hockey. Thanks for joining us.